Welcome back to Faith and Fire. Today is an episode that you've all been asking for, ladies. We are going to sit down with two men of faith and talk about what it's like to be a man of faith. How does faith show up for a man? Is it different than it shows up for women? What is it like? So today I have two men with me who are not only men of faith, but also fathers. And we're going to have a conversation about what does faith look like for them? How does it show up differently? And who knows where else this will go. But ladies, you asked for it and I obliged. So today we have two guests with us, Delbert and Rel. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hey.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Okay. So, y'all heard the question on the floor is when I say man of faith, what does that mean to you?
So taking a stab at this, before we started here, me and Dale were talking. It was one of those things where there's a distinguishing factor when you speak about, the male presence being in the home, being, in faith or in anything in general. Mm-hmm. It's not carried in the same tone as, the motherhood, because again, you hear that a lot, like motherhood. You go to a doctor office, you're like, hey, where's the mom at to sign the forms? When it goes to the father, it's not the same. We're not treated in the same aspect. So you can see what the distinguishing factor is. We play a pivotal role and is either sometimes overestimated or underestimated in regards to value and what we bring.
Oh, okay. So what is it? Like you said, you play a pivotal role. What role do you play?
In faith?
Yeah, in faith.
Or in life.
Let's start faith and we can go out from there.
Faith is basically something you can't see, but you know is there. It's really a difficult one for me because it's hard to separate one from the other.
Yeah.
Faith is, I'm trying to find the words to say what faith is to me. Faith is,
it's a big concept.
It is. It's bigger than just a simple, what is faith? You live with faith every day. I'm at the point in my life where it's not about my faith. It's about the faith for the generations coming behind me. To create an environment where they can be faithful.
I like that.
Because we come from an environment where that was not, there's been a disconnect.
Okay.
And the challenge at this point is to reconnect the entire family unit. That's the responsibility of this man.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to separate faith from life.
You're doing a great job already of telling me, answering. So you said there's been a disconnect. Talk to me. What is that disconnect? Tell me more about that, because this is news to me.
There's a disconnect in terms of a man's responsibility within his family.
Okay.
The family unit has been eviscerated, the black family unit, because black men have not been participating in the family unit.
Uh-huh.
So now, we didn't decide to have this conversation, but that's the conversation we were having before we came in here.
Yeah.
And that conversation was very enlightening.
Yes.
And reinforcing. And so if you're going to look at it from a man's perspective, it is about taking care of your family, making sure your family is safe, making sure your family has everything that they need to live in this society functionally.
Yeah.
And the examples of not having, you can lose faith when you don't have the safety that you need to grow when you can't protect yourself.
Ooh.
So that's kind of what we were talking about that for 30, 45 minutes before we came in.
One of the things I loved about how we were having that conversation, and it made it more natural, when we think about it, it's you can't really separate the faith and the life aspect of it as the male role, because we are naturally the provider. And when we think about the provision of things, is you think about how you bring to the table of what you bring in, not just financially, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. What you invest and what you infuse in each one of the units inside of your house, you're responsible for that. And when you think about that marital bond, that union, what's your particular role? Now, my upbringing was different. That's another thing we were just speaking about. What's the differentiating factor of growing up in a two-parent household as opposed to a single-parent household? Is there a difference? Can you react differently? One of the things me and Dale was going over is people can turn out entirely different. You can become a product of your environment, or you can become the complete opposite of that. So understanding my particular lane, I grew up in a single-parent household. It was a little rough for me, just understanding my way, finding my way. One of the best things that I can say that my father did do was being absent in my life, because it taught me what to look for with the father, how to become a man, because I didn't have that male provision in my house to see that. I saw a struggling mom. I saw her going above and beyond to try to do what she thought best of how to teach me how to become a man. But unfortunately, she can't teach me how to become a man. I learned very earlier at the age of 8? Well, you're the man of the house and you got other siblings to take care of. Well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
How do I take on that role? How can I be in that shoe? But to take a step back, that wasn't my journey. That wasn't the life that I was meant to be, but I had to sort out what that meant to become. And that was my first journey to understanding what it's meant to be like a male in society. Because growing up, it was an absence. It's an emotional baggage that was left, that was depleted. Mm-hmm. So now stepping into a space where now you have to find out what it's like to be a black man in America, a black man of faith, a black man with integrity. All of those different factors now come into play where I had to learn very quickly, do I want to become, again, a product of my environment, to become a destructive or toxic cycle, or do I want to go against the things that I know to become?
Yeah. So it sounds like at a young age, you said you were told you're the man of the house. So when it comes to the faith of the household, like, were you also responsible for that? Or is that a role that your mother kept for herself? Or like, how did that play into it?
So in our household, faith was a little different. It was used interchangeably. Everyone believes in God. Mm-hmm. At that time, we went through several things that we were trying to go through. So going through Catholic, going through Baptist, trying to find a particular way. It was one of those ones where we were, whatever mom said, we were on Sunday morning. And after, Sunday was over, it was time to get regular back into the life. And after that, it was more growing up. Why do we have to put on a role just for Sunday? Mm-hmm. What does God look like every day for me? And me growing up in the area of Chicago, I questioned, I don't know if God hears me. And I didn't have a sure confidence or security in faith yet to say God was coming here for me, because how can he come here for me when my father left me? Mm. So that left a hole in my heart, in a sense. And I had to remind myself not to get so downwinded with that response, because at that time, growing up, I didn't have other siblings. So I am the second oldest of, 7. And me now being, the oldest male, I am the go-to person. And it was one of the ones where I remember growing up, I was always taking, my youngest siblings to church with me. And, I ended up joining the choir. So it was African Methodist Episcopal Church.
Hey, Amy in the house.
And those are the things I remember constantly every Sunday, going to, joining the choir, bringing them with me, getting more in tune with what faith is truly is, as opposed to what faith was told to me that it should look like. And it was truly then I learned what it meant to be a male by getting closer to the Bible and applying that in my life. Because again, one thing I think we do as a generation, we struggle with the traditional mindset of how life is. Well, in the Bible, you know, we want to say the oath, you know, for better or for worse and all of those things. But when the times get rough, oh, I'm out of here. I can't stand that individual. Wait, that's the worst part. But we said this is what we did under oath. We were supposed to stick this out. So who are we? Yeah. What are we truly doing in that space?
Wow. So it sounds like early years, it was your mom really leading faith, but then you took the time to figure out your faith for yourself.
Yeah.
Wow. So what's your experience been? Was it similar?
You know what? I have a question for you.
Oh, okay. What's your question?
I want you to define faith.
Oh, there's a whole episode on this. So here's where we landed.
Short version.
Sure. Oh, you know I'm not good at summarizing. That's why our episodes are an hour long. But in short, we really just said faith is believing in something. So typically, when we talk about faith on this channel, we're talking about whatever you believe. And typically, it has some root in a higher being, right? Sometimes we have folks come on who say, I believe in myself, which is different for me, but it's a conversation, whatever you believe and whatever you consider your faith to be, right? That's faith. So now with that.
See, the reason I ask is because when you grow up in scarcity,
yeah,
you don't really have time to analyze what faith is when you're a youngster coming up, because you're just doing and being and surviving. Faith comes when faith is hope. Faith and hope go together. So when you have faith, you're looking at hope. When you're in a hopeless situation, how do you have faith? So that's the challenge. It's a challenge when you're coming up. And, I think there's a disconnect with men in church if we're going into the church, because you can see there's a disproportionate amount of women in church as opposed to men.
Now I think that would be a draw. Church full of women. I'm just saying. Okay, continue.
So
it's a draw the other way around. If I walked into a church full of men, I'd be like, I found my church home.
So, and there's a reason.
Yes.
There's a reason men are not as social with their faith as women are. They're not social with their inner feelings. And if you have the disconnect of coming up when you had to decide those things on your own and you weren't a part of the church, it's difficult to make that transition to let your guard down to be social about your faith.
That's huge.
Yeah.
So
I feel like I'm having an aha moment, and that makes so much sense what you're saying. Like, we don't teach men traditionally, I'll say traditionally, don't jump in my DMs, to open up about their emotions and that's really what you see a lot in these communities of faith is like people really emoting and like, I love how you say it, like being social about their faith. They commune with faith. But I even heard it in your story. You kind of had to figure out for yourself what your faith was.
I think so. I just recently came into a term. It's called the sympathetic nervous response. So going through a sympathetic nervous response, it's the natural thing that we now know as the fight or flight. Mm-hmm. So going through these emotions and going through these things in life, if you don't know how to control your emotions or make it more normalized that you are in tune with your emotions, your natural response is going to be the flight. So that's why you see in, the scarcity of numbers of a male population stepping up in certain areas. So again, it doesn't matter if it's in the church or more so in the home setting, again, because we have to get into a practice of normalizing a lot of these areas and making it to a sense where people can feel more confident of who you are and how you are actually being utilized in that sense.
Yeah. It's interesting that you talk about utilize, because when I was thinking about men of faith, and I was like, I think I kind of honed in on a little bit of what you said earlier about women usually are the people you think of when you think of the ones looking after the spiritual needs of the household, right? And I was like, I know men serve a role. What do they serve? And so I was like, okay, where do I see men serving in the church? And I was like, well, they're the trustees. They're the ones with the hammers. They're the ones cleaning the toilets. They're the ones locking up after dark, walking women to their cars. They're the parking lot attendants. You had a whole tussle with a parking lot attendant. But those are traditionally the roles you think of when you think of the men in the church. But I feel like there's more there. And of course, those are the roles because they might also be the roles you may play in our households, right? I feel like there's more to pull at that thread, though.
There are so many things that happen in a man's life that's different from women that create a safety mentality or a kind of like fight or flight. Or an assessment that has to be made before you can relax to even open yourself up spiritually.
Ooh.
And if you there's and it can be a small trigger, especially when you grow up in an environment of scarcity.
Yeah.
And you never leave that. And so and if you can't think past that part, it's hard to open up, well, what is the church going to do for me? Or what is what is that going to do? Because I'm out here grinding. I'm out here trying to survive. Mm-hmm. And if you're in survival mode, you don't think about anything else. And sometimes you out of survival mode, but you're still in survival mode.
Yeah.
So it's a transition. And we cannot, if we show emotion is weakness. Mm-hmm. It can be perceived as weakness. And if weakness is taken advantage of.
Ooh.
And no man wants to be taken advantage of.
So if you're sitting there, eyes closed, praising, you're in a weak, vulnerable position.
You could feel that way.
Yeah.
Some people do. Some people get past that. Mm. But the reason why most men don't walk into a church, I won't say most men, some men, is because they don't want to let that guard down. They're not comfortable letting that guard down.
I have to be the protector. I have to be seen in some type of way. So I that makes perfect sense.
Wow. So if the man is in this place, which makes so much sense, like I could even see it in the church, like those are the security guards at the church. They're always doing protector roles. Like they're the trustees, they're the security. Not always. I say always, not meaning always. But often you'll see the men in those protective roles. And so they're still holding on to that. And some men, like you said, are able to get past it and maybe they praise while they're in those roles. But when I look around the church that I went to, like the last church that I went to, and I look around it in my head and I'm like, okay, yeah, security guard. There was the one guarding the door. There was the armor bearer. There was, they were all in roles where they were serving in that capacity.
And they probably were not worshiping. They were probably watching.
The security guards are so focused. I can always tell who they are because we're looking forward and they're looking at us. And I'm fascinated by operations and logistics. So I'm watching them.
So are they getting that spiritual moment?
That's a good question, right?
Probably not.
Exactly.
Probably not.
But that was their way to be in the church, is to show up the way they know how to show up in their lives.
I think but you see, they're missing something. That's not enough. As I've gotten older and feel like I can be more open, if you don't open yourself up to receive, you can never get it. And it's, how do you do it?
You knew that. You knew where I was going with that next.
You have to let your guard down. You have to feel comfortable enough to let your guard down. And once you let your guard down, you can experience all of that emotion, all of that release, all of the energy that I know now that you walk into a church and you're energized when you come out is because you let your guard down and you let that energy come inside of you and you regurgitate it basically positively.
Yeah.
And that's a rare thing for most men I know.
I like how you say that, but to unpackage that is like, where do you learn that? Because sometimes it's not often taught in a church setting. Because again, you look at the pastor or the deacon, the ones that relay the message that you need to hear that penetrates your heart. to the point that it inculcates it, that you understand exactly the purpose or the vision that you need to have. But it comes before that too. And again, is really adopting that setting as well.
I think that what has to happen is you have to get to a point in your life where you have a certain level of peace. And once you have the peace, then the rest of it can happen. If the fight is on,
Yep.
and I don't know, that's not a terminology that a woman may understand as easily as a man. When you're in the fight and you never relax.
Yeah.
You're in the fight. And at a point, if you're fortunate enough, you realize that you need more than just that fight. You need that renewal. You need that release. You need that positive energy to come inside of you. And it's hard to do it when you're in the fight.
One way to look at it is your wall is up because you haven't ensured your psychological safety. And until you have that psychological safety intact, how can I be naturally comfortable to be vulnerable with you? Because it's one thing to be confident, but now I got to trust you. I got to trust your ability from one man to another man to lead, or I got to trust my spouse. I got to trust my wife to leave when I'm not strong enough. But that's soaked in the marital vows. But again, those are the things that's overlooked because, again, the world sets it so that the man has to be so hard. You gotta be hard. You don't show emotions. You gotta be so rigid. But that's not true.
You said you gotta be so hard. In my head, I heard it say, you gang banging on bacon? What is it, Cat Williams who says that? But like, it's that kind of mentality. Like, you gotta be hard all the time. Like, just show up at breakfast, just hard.
It's the DMX mode every day. Every day.
He growled. I can't. I love it. Okay. So I feel like we're really getting to the root of this. And I mean, okay. So given all of that and given where you have to go to get past that, you're both fathers. How does that play? Like, just in case we needed another layer, like, how does that play in? Because, you're a father and now, you're looking after the spiritual well-being of your kids, right? How do you, but also trying to just be a man of your household and trying to push past all of that. How does all that come together?
So I don't know if we have enough time for this, but this is a new layer that I'm now going through and peeling back. So when I say layer, so as an onion, going through this life now, me now past being married, so living, a divorcee, now taking on, okay, well, my kids being with me full time, what does that look like? So you're looking at all of their needs. Now having a young adult, having young teenagers live with you is not forgetting the integrity of who you are, regardless of what anything that has happened or occurred in life. I love how, Dale, you spoke of this earlier. You're talking about the macros and the micros in life and the universe. What did you build your family upon? You soak in what you exactly know each and every day. You hone in on the micros that you build your foundations upon. Each and every day, I never let my kids forget a moment to stop and take time to pray, because those are the things that you have to believe in yourself, but believe in a higher being, because your purpose is destined for something. My upbringing is way different than my kids. But one thing that I always attest to them is I'm nothing without them, and they're my legacy. So for me, is everything I do is for them. And for that is, well, yeah, you can't screw up in life. I can't let you screw up in life, regardless of whatever you think or go through. I'm here, but also know that it's deep rooted in the faith that I believe in you, and then God believes in you. So going in that mindset is that it's only up from here.
Yeah. Ooh. Oh, see, you have plenty of time for that.
Oh, I got more, but I
just said I just scratched the surface, ma'am. So you're also a father and you are currently married. I say currently, like more because it's a new thing. It's not going anywhere. But you're recently, there we go. That's a better word. You are recently-ish married. So how does that show up for you as a father and in that journey? It sounds like you found that peace potentially, or enough to understand what you were looking for. That's a hard one, right? Like,
Well, I'm. Where do I start? I am at a very, very peaceful place. The most peace I've ever had in my life. My children are. I live for my legacy. I live for my legacy. The most important thing for me to do now is to set my legacy up at this point in my life to have better opportunities than I did. On this journey, it's this journey of faith. This journey of faith is about simplicity at the end of the day, and the simplicity is to make sure that my self-esteem is in the right place, that the things that are most important to me are not material. They are the well-being of the people who surround me. And I don't mean that in a financial sense. I mean that in a mental sense, that they're at peace with themselves. Because I remember when I was 15, 20, 30, 40, I was not at peace. But I didn't know how to express that. And I didn't know how to express to someone else not to take that same path. So now I'm at a point now where I'm very comfortable with my place in life and the simplicity and the complexity of my life. But the simple piece is to reinforce the self-esteem, to let them know that they're valuable, that they're important, that they're the most important thing to me, and that whatever it is, it's going to be all right.
yeah. And in your household, do you consider yourself one who really looks after the, spiritual well-being of, or is that more of your wife's role, or how does that play into your role in the household?
It's a dual thing.
Okay.
It's a dual thing. We go back and forth with that. That's a regular topic of conversation about faith and about. It's not necessarily faith because it's not characterized that way because it's a free flowing conversation. We're going back and forth, and it could be about anything, but it's about fundamentals. It's about the fundamental things, and we always laugh and joke and say we have our petty moments, but the reality is most of the things that we talk about are deep, thought-provoking, and that's the best part about being married.
Yeah.
So
I like that. It's a partnership, and you partner with your wife to look after the faith and well-being of the family.
Yes, she has a role. I have a role.
Okay. The question.
Ooh.
Okay, hold on. I heard
No,
the ooh. It sounded like it was going to go somewhere good.
No, it's just you spoke on something deep there, just the partnership. And I feel like that at time is the unspoken thing in today's time. So
Yeah.
I'll let you go with that.
See, I was just going to be silly. Like, if this were the shoe game and one of y'all had to hold up the shoe to say, like, I look after the faith of the family, who would be holding up the shoe?
Both of us.
Oh, that is one of the options, isn't it?
Yeah.
I forgot. I haven't played it in a long time. I did. Well, I love that. I love the partnership. If I took one of the shoes away, I'm just kidding.
There's something to be said to be being married to a preacher. And the difference is there's the background person too.
Mm-hmm.
And the background person has to have something to say and participate, or the relationship becomes stale if you can't participate in that part of it.
Yeah.
And so I participate, but I know my role.
What's your role?
My role is behind the scenes. My role is not to step in front. I'm beside or behind, and I'm good with that.
You're the trustee?
I'm the protector. I'm the provider.
Oh, you the bouncer.
I'm the driver. I'm the valet. I'm whatever she needs me to be in that moment.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It's the truth.
I love this. Oh my goodness. See, I guess going into this conversation, I think I had more questions than answers. And it really is interesting because when you pull away the layers of the onion, really what I'm seeing is the role of the man in faith just mirrors the role in life. And I mean, now that I say it, of course that makes sense, but I don't know that I had ever thought about it like that or really dug into it.
I think when you think about it, the word is used interchangeably in the male's perspective, because again, we won't separate it when we understand our role and our values of how we're giving back. Because Dale mentioned something earlier, is really providing hope. Because again, in this generation, this upbringing is vastly different than generations years ago. Hope wasn't a necessary thing. I didn't grow up in hope. For me, I became a change that I wanted to see. So I learned how to be a man because of the manless people in my life. And it really took my godfather showing me what it meant to what a man truly was.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up, it's weird in February. So Martin Luther King and everyone, Black excellence. I read everything, but that was only given to me in a book. No one came to show me what that life was truly like. So again, a lot of things that I've experienced, I was exposed to book mentality, but I wasn't a book kid. I lived my life vicariously through whatever I created because of my artistic lifestyle of pen and paper. So if I drew it, that was my reality. So now to see life coming full force, now to understand exactly what it means and how instrumental the male presence is inside of a home.
Yeah. Has that changed you and your view?
Oh, very much so. Very much so. Understanding my role and how pivotal it is. So I'm going to use an ism. It's the unspoken thing. Everyone think about how water flows, the fluidity of things. So everyone knows that, hey, water's just going to flow down. But no one ever speaks about when water flows up. It can flows up a mountain to go to the top of a mountain. And when you think about that fluidity, you think about how impactful that is in a person's life. So when we think about that psychological safety, you want to make sure you're fluid, you're well balanced. You want to make sure you're comfortable with your integrity and your vulnerability, that at any given time, you can be everything, like you said, Dale. So that protector, that driver, that bouncer, you want to be all that you need to be for your household at any given time.
And I pick on you because I know you have boys. And so as you look at raising young men of faith, does your experience with faith or growing up and exploring and coming into your own faith change how you would raise them as young men of faith?
I don't think it changes. If anything, it made me have a harder exterior of how I raised them. And again, growing up Black in America, making sure they understand everything that's truly expected of them, regardless if they're listening to me or not. But it's our job as a father, as males in America, to make sure we lay out the good, bad, and indifferent to them. So when we speak about faith, is truly to understand what life is, to understand what hope is, and also to paint the picture of, hey, well, you experience when things are good. You've only seen the good life. Well, guess what you don't know? What a bad life is. But what I'm going to do everything within my power to prevent you from ever seeing a bad life. But the moment you step out, foot of the door to your own path, you're going to have to create what life look like for you, what hope looks like for you outside of what I've shown you.
Yeah, because you can only pour into them now. And then you just have to hope Jesus takes the wheel when they leave the house.
Oh, yes.
Nice. Okay. Well, I want to thank both of you for having this conversation. It was very open, very transparent. I really got a good sense. Okay. So I'm gonna act as a delegate right now. I had a young woman in church, a few of them then gathered around and said, I want you to talk to men of faith and hear from them. And so I'm going to ask the question on their mind. So if you are a woman of faith, how can you support your man of faith? Like, if I were to leave them with a nugget that they can take, how would you suggest that they show up as to really support the man of faith in their life, or the man of faith that the Boaz they're praying for, whatever that may be? What advice would you have?
Me first.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know what? You have to be able to listen.
Mm.
You have to be able to speak coherently. You can't have a unrealistic caricature of what a man is or what a man is capable of because you've seen it on television or you've seen it, you think it's this. A man has emotions. A man is not a rock. He will be a rock for you, but when he comes home, he doesn't want to be a rock. He wants to be able to relax and he wants to feel comfortable and he wants to feel safe with his emotions when he's at home.
Mm-hmm.
That he can say or be whoever he needs to be before he steps out there and goes back out in the world and fight.
Yeah.
And you need to understand that. And you can be demanding, but you have to know there's a point where you have to stop and be, what is the word I'm looking for? Compassionate.
Ooh.
And if you don't understand how to turn that off, then your man can't trust you. He won't trust you. The man that you're looking for will not trust you, and he will not stick around. So if you have to understand that men are in some ways more emotional than women because we don't let our emotions out as regularly as women do. Women can get together and just have a conversation about everything. That's not a man's mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Especially I should use my code word, the micro man.
I feel like it's an inside joke that I would love to learn more about.
I'll tell you, the black man.
Okay.
We were talking about macro and micro because we're there's a kinship that comes from being a black man. The black man experience is unique, and you can't really explain it to anybody. You can try, but when you get to be a certain age or stage in your life, there's just an experience of things that you've had to deal with that are unique to you, unique to that black experience. You can't explain it to a woman. You don't. You just don't know.
Yeah.
But with that being said, there is no place to let your guard down if you don't feel safe at home. If the home is not welcoming, if the home is, and I'm not talking about a meal, I'm not talking about anything. I'm talking about the individual at home when you both get home. That's what I would say you tell all women of faith.
No, that's deep.
Yeah. I love that you said a key phrase that I often reflect on, and that's being compassionate. Most times people say the words, I'm empathetic. Well, empathetic is just thinking of what to do. Like, I thought of you, but compassion is actually the action, the driving force behind that. So for me, is being compassionate along with being empathetic, integrity, being authentic, showing up. But I'm going to even get a little bit more raw with it. I'm going to say having grit. And having that grit identifies different outlayers of saying that in the heat of the moment, like, you are going to hold yourself accountable regardless of whatever situation that you're faced in. I'm going to show up for my partner, and my partner may not even show that he may need me at this moment because he may hide in his emotions, but I know that I need to support my partner. I'm going to have enough grit to stand by him regardless of his stubbornness, because us guys, we can be stubborn at times, and we'll own that because of our emotions, because we can't let our guard down. We can't be caught slipping.
Yeah.
So I need the person to have grit, but I also need the person to know that we're not all sometimes come healed. We don't come packaged together. Hurt people hurt. And understanding what lane that male comes in at whatever point of time you found them at in life. So understanding what role you play for them is a pivotal thing. So to show up in your most authentic self and understanding how you can just be there, that sympathetic, that mindful, that listening ear for them, actively listening. That's the number one piece there, is just be that confidant, that partner, that person to know, like, hey, I'm your ride or die. Regardless, we're going through it, but I'm still going to be here for you.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Okay, ladies, you heard it here. This This is the energy you got to be given if you want to be able to support and fully be there for your man of faith or your future, your Boaz that you're still looking for. So, oh my goodness. Well, thank you both for this insightful conversation. I really appreciate your time today.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to come back.
Yes. And Mayrel, you're returning. Delbert. Now, I love that you called him Del because this is a thing now, Del and Rel.
We just made a moment happen. I get it.
It's a moment. So thank you. And thank you both all for joining us today. I really appreciate having you and part of our conversation, a fly on the wall as we talk about what it's like to be a man of faith. Hopefully you got a little insight, something, a nugget for yourself, a nugget to pass on to somebody, maybe even the next generation, and help mold the men of faith in your life. As we are heading into this Father's Day, take a look around and think of the men in your life, the fathers in your life. And it may not be your father, it may be other fathers. And this is their journey. This is what they're going through. This is how they're experiencing. How can you support them more fully as they're on this journey? Whether they've found that place, that peace, so that they can truly be, or they are still searching for it. They really look to you to help support and bolster them so that they can be the men that they want to be and leave a legacy. So thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to like, share, and follow so that you can hear more on Faith and Fire.